The sky was a burnt-out watercolor, streaked with the last orange embers of a dying sun. Somewhere along the cracked stretch of Highway 9, between a forgotten town and the rest of nowhere, a lone gas station clung to relevance. Its flickering neon sign buzzed above a dusty lot where tumbleweeds had long since given up their chase with the wind. The station's name, Leo's Fuel and Food, was half burned out, leaving only Lowe's Owl and FOO glowing in desperate pink. Time was 7:43 p.m. Sandra Bullock, megastar and recipient of too many unearned public opinions, coasted into the station in a silver Range Rover coated in road dust. She hadn't meant to drive this far. After wrapping a long charity fundraiser up in Santa Fe, a draining day of cameras, speeches, handshakes, and high-heel smiles, she just needed to get away. She told her assistant she was staying at a spa. Instead, she drove. No GPS, no schedule. Just the hum of the engine and the blur of desert out the window. She hadn't felt this invisible in years. It was heaven. Her car was nearly running on fumes when she spotted the neon ghost sign and turned. In dot as the pump clicked into place, Sandra looked around. It was dead quiet except for the distant, guttural sound of motorcycles in the distance. Somewhere behind the scrub hills, an engine howled like a wolf. Then another. Then 3 more. She exhaled, annoyed but not alarmed. Yet she was halfway through filling the tank when the low thunder of bikes roared in like an unwelcome storm cloud. 5 of them, chrome and attitude, pulled into the station. Their engines revved loud, more than necessary, like they were trying to announce something. Sandra didn't look up. She didn't need to. She'd met this kind before. The men mostly. Leather, denim, and beer bellies spread out like they owned the cracked pavement. One of them, tall and snake-thin with a Confederate flag bandana, sauntered over. His smile was crooked in that "I just discovered the internet 2 months ago" kind of way. "Well now," he drawled. "Ain't you a fancy little sight in the middle of nowhere?" Sandra turned, deliberately slow. She gave him a tight-lipped smile. "Just filling up." "Don't suppose I could get a selfie?" he asked, stepping closer. "My old lady ain't gonna believe I ran into Sandy from the movies." "Not today, thanks," Sandra replied. She kept her tone even, polite. She'd learned that smiling at fire doesn't stop it from burning you. The biker's expression didn't change, but the air around him got heavier. "You Hollywood types always too good for real folks?" "I'm just trying to get gas," she said. "That's it." Another biker ambled over. This one had a beard that could store a family of squirrels and wore sunglasses despite the setting sun. "She don't look so tough without all the makeup and lights, huh?" he said to the first man, though his eyes stayed locked on her. Sandra's fingers itched toward her phone and the cue folder inside the car. But then something shifted. The air got still. A small bell jingled behind the glass of the stations. Food Mart. A man had just stepped out, holding a coffee in one hand and a worn motorcycle helmet in the other. He wore a dark jacket that looked like it had survived both war and weather, and his hair was slightly windblown like a hero in a 90s movie freeze frame. He walked with a purpose but not a threat. KeanuReeves didn't walk like a movie star. He walked like someone who had nothing to prove and everything to offer if you just left him alone. He'd been inside, sipping cheap gas station coffee, half reading a book on Buddhist motorcycle repair, don't ask, and minding his own business. But then he saw her. Not Sandra Bullock, the celebrity, her, a woman, alone, surrounded. It took him 4 seconds to set the coffee down and step outside. He didn't say anything. Not at first. Just stood behind the bikers, close enough that one of them noticed a presence and turned. The guy junked slightly. "You lost, bro?" The Confederate bandana guy asked Keanu, trying to sound casual but suddenly less confident. Keanu smiled the kind of smile that could mean anything. Or everything. "Nope. Just passing through. You know her or something? The guy asked. Doesn't matter, Keanu said. What matters is you're crowding her. The bearded biker snorted. You think this is a movie or something? Keanu paused. He tilted his head slightly, then looked at Sandra. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Barely. Keanu's eyes flicked back to the group, then maybe stepped back. For a long second, no one moved. The sun dipped below the horizon like it didn't want to see what happened next. One of the bikers finally muttered, Come on, man, let's just get beer and go. But the tall one wasn't done. I know you, he said slowly, staring at Keanu. You single quotes You're that guy. From the John Wayne movies. Wick, muttered another. John Wick, dumbass. The realization hung in the air like smoke. Now. This wasn't a movie, and Keanu wasn't here to fight. But reality has a strange way of bending when someone known for surviving a dozen assassins steps between you and your ego. Dude, that's Keanu freaking Reeves, the third biker whispered. I am not going viral for getting headbutted by Neo, man. Let's go. The group murmured among themselves. A few shuffled back toward the store, suddenly very interested in snack cakes and sugarless gum. The tall biker lingered, giving Keanu a look that tried to be threatening but landed somewhere between lost puppy and expired ham. Then, he turned and walked away. The only sound left was the slow click of the gas pump finishing its job. Sandra exhaled, shoulders sinking as if a backpack of lead had been dropped. Keanu looked at her. You sure you're all right? Yeah, she said, still processing. You didn't have to do that, he shrugged. Didn't have to drink this coffee either. But here we are. She cracked a smile despite herself. You know, she sighed. It's kind of surreal having Keanu Reeves appear out of nowhere to stop harassment. Keanu winced. You recognized me. You were in the lake house, Keanu. I think I can spot you at a gas station. He chuckled, and for a moment, the tension melted like butter on hot asphalt. Then he glanced toward the horizon. You probably shouldn't stay long, neither should you. He nodded. She extended a hand. Sandra. He shook it. Keanu. They didn't need last names. Those were for press releases and movie posters. For this moment, they were just two humans who happened to collide at Pump 6 on Highway 9. And somewhere in the distance, the stars began to emerge one by one, silent, unnoticed, shining anyway. Most people never noticed the man in the corner of the room, or in this case, the one in the corner of the gas station food mart, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. That said Lowe's, where fuel meets family. Keanu Reeves sat at a tiny table meant for truckers to scarf down burritos, but his burrito sat untouched. He was watching, not in a creepy way, not even in a celebrity disguised as ordinary guy way. He simply watched the world like someone who didn't entirely trust it to stay still while he looked away. From behind his sunglasses, he tracked the small scene unfolding outside by Pump 6. A woman, clearly out of place in this dusty nowhere zone, trying to fill her tank without drawing attention. But of course, attention was her curse. And Keanu knew something about curses. He watched the way the bikers encroached. The fake friendliness, the way they leaned in too close, too loud. He didn't recognize her at first, only saw a person being boxed in. But as she turned her face toward the pump, he saw Sandra Bullock. They'd worked together once a lifetime ago. Not close, not hang out after rap close. But she was kind, thoughtful, the kind of person who knew the names of every crew member and brought cupcakes on Fridays. Now she looked tired. Not makeup tired. Soul-tired. And something in Keanu stirred. Again. It had been almost 3 months since he left Los Angeles. No press release, no Instagram update, no cryptic quotes to a podcast. Just left. Packed a small bag, straddled his black BMW R9T, and disappeared down the California coastline like a man chasing the horizon. He told himself he was just riding to clear his head. But the truth? He was riding away from ghosts. Not literal ones, though at this point, that might have been easier. His sister's passing. The quiet ending of a relationship no one knew he was in. The weight of fame heavy not because people looked, but because they needed him to be more. Then he was Saint Keanu, sad Keanu, meme Keanu, stoic, mystical, ageless internet monk. What they didn't see was the 2 a.m. panic attacks, the guilt, the survivor's grief, the loneliness that fame never quite fixed. He spent a week in Sedona, reading Thich Nhat Hanh and eating peanut butter from the jar. Another week outside Taos, where he stayed in a trailer park under a fake name and learned how to rebuild a carburetor from a retired Army vet named Mitch who swore up and down he'd once punched a grizzly bear. Keanu didn't question him. Some men have truths too weird to disprove. He wasn't looking to be a hero, or a sage, or even remembered. He just wanted to be left alone with his silence, but then silence became too loud. So he kept writing. The gas station that night was supposed to be just another blip in the road. Stop, fuel up, bad coffee, maybe a Snickers bar. If the universe was feeling generous. And yet, there she was. Sandra. And there they were, leather-clad, half-drunk, testosterone-fueled bowls in a china shop. He waited longer than he should have. Part of him wanted someone else to step in. The station clerk. A bystander. The very sky, but no one came. And then something in him whispered, go. Not shouted. Not demanded. Just whispered. And that was enough. Back in the present, Keanu sat in the dirt beside his motorcycle, now parked beneath a flickering light in the back of the station. Sandra had driven off. She waved once, briefly, through the window. He nodded back. No contact info exchanged. No, hey, let's catch up. Just mutual understanding and the crackling silence of people who've seen too much and still choose kindness. Keanu didn't feel heroic. He didn't feel anything. He just felt present. It was the most alive he'd felt in weeks. Flashback. 2 months earlier, New Mexico, the wind in the desert didn't blow. It hummed. Keanu stood barefoot in the sand, eyes closed, listening to the voice of a man who called himself Hawk, though his real name was probably Gary. Balance ain't about being still, Hawk was saying. It's about not falling. Keanu raised an eyebrow. That's literally the same thing. Nope. One's meditating. The other's surviving. Keanu cracked a dry smile. How'd you get so philosophical? Prison. And a broken heart. Ah. Hawk taught him how to breathe again. Not in a yoga influencer way, but in a real, deep, gut-expanding, soul-bleeding way. He showed him how to sharpen a knife and gut a fish, neither of which Keanu needed in Hollywood, but both of which grounded him. Hawk also gave him a piece of advice. When you see something wrong, you got 3 choices. Walk away, make it worse, or make it better. Most people pick the first. The loud ones pick the second. But the brave ones, they pick the third. Present. Highway 9. Keanu lit a small cigarillo. He never smoked them all the way through. Just like the smell. It reminded him of his grandfather's garage. Oil and smoke. Simpler times. He didn't feel like the KeanuReeves people thought they knew. That guy would have delivered a one-liner. Done a roundhouse kick. Rode off into the moonlight on a Ducati, duster billowing like Batman's cape. But this Keanu? He just stood between a woman and danger, and let his presence be louder than any punch. And somehow, that felt more heroic. He took out a small, dog-eared notebook from his jacket pocket and wrote, Day 87. Sandra Bullock. Bikers. Didn't punch anyone. Still breathing, he paused. Then added, Still listening to the whisper. The gas station clerk, a wiry kid with greasy hair and a metallic shirt, stepped outside and leaned against the doorframe. Hey, UH. That was cool back there, kid said. Keanu looked up. The kid hesitated. You're you know, right? That guy. Keanu offered a small smile. Sometimes. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you fight them? Keanu thought for a moment, watching a moth buzz suicidally toward the neon light. Because sometimes you win more by standing still. The kid nodded slowly, as if the words were a riddle he'd solve in 5 years. Anyway, cool bike. Thanks. Keanu got on the bike, kicked it to life, and rode off into the night, into the silence. Into the road that had no name, but always led somewhere. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he wasn't done yet. 3 seconds. That's how long it took for the tone of the evening to shift. 3 seconds. The sun had dipped beneath the horizon, and the sky above the gas station flickered from a smoky purple to the color of deep bruises. Crickets sang lazily in the weeds, and a warm breeze tangled with the smell of old gasoline and desert sagebrush. The bikers were still swaggering, laughing, jeering, orbiting Sandra like beer-scented planets. But the sound of their voices changed. Not the volume. The shape. It was the shape of men who suddenly felt watched. One of them turned, eyebrows raised. Who the hell? That's when they saw him. A man in a dark jacket, worn jeans, and boots scuffed from 1,000 forgotten miles. Helmet in one hand, a flickering glint of calm in his eyes, and silence. The kind of silence that stood taller than their voices. That filled the air like fog. That made you forget how to breathe for a second. Keanu Reeves didn't look angry. He looked present. That was worse. The lead biker, Dusty, was not used to silence. He fed off noise, engine noise, bar noise, argument noise. He'd been kicked out of more places than he'd ever been welcomed into, and wore it like a badge. Dusty had 2 types of facial expressions, smirk and smirk, but meaner. He'd fought in parking lots over pool tables and broken 4 noses, 3 not his. He hadn't cried since 1997, and that was only because he ran over a raccoon by accident. But right now, his smirk was flickering. You lost, buddy? He said, voice just a notch higher than intended. It echoed off the walls of the station, clattered against the pump. Keanu didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, weight on one leg, face unreadable. The second biker, a stocky man with prison tattoos that said no regards. Yes, really, muttered. Dude. Is that Neo? It's John Wick, the third corrected, nervously. Don't look him in the eyes. Keanu stepped forward, slow and deliberate, like the wind itself had decided to walk upright. You're crowding her, he said, voice low. Calm. Calm in the way that makes people nervous. Dusty narrowed his eyes. And who are you? Her bodyguard? No, Keanu said, shrugging. Just a guy who thinks people should mind their space. Sandra didn't speak. She stood by her car, keys in hand, eyes watching the way a hawk watches a snake that's deciding whether or not to strike. Listen, Dusty said, puffing out his chest. We're just having a little conversation. She said no. Yeah? So did my ex-wife, and she still took half my house. Keanu's head tilted slightly, not threatening, not confused. Just processing. Then, slowly, and you still haven't figured out why she left. The other bikers went silent. Even the insects stopped chirping. Somewhere, a dog barked ... Then, immediately regretted it. Dusty blinked. Keanu stepped forward again, just one step, but it was enough to make the others shift. It wasn't that he looked like he was about to fight. It's that he didn't look like he needed to. Some men wear their violence like a badge. Others wear it like a shadow. Keanu was all shadow. Sandra finally spoke. Hey, she said, voice calm but edged with fire. I said no, I meant it. She turned toward Keanu. Thanks for the help, but I can handle myself. Keanu nodded once. I know. Just thought you deserved a fair arena. That earned the smallest smile from her. Hey man, the youngest biker suddenly piped up. We didn't know it was ... you. Keanu looked at him. It's not about me, he said. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching. There it was again. That thunder without a storm. Voice. The kind that could shatter ego without ever raising volume. Dusty looked around. At his crew, at Sandra. At the man who stood like silence incarnate. Then he did something no one expected. He laughed. It was a sharp, awkward laugh. Like a balloon popping in a church. You know what? I don't need this, he said, raising both hands. Come on, boys, let's bounce. The beer in this town probably sucks anyway. The others followed, grumbling, confused, uncertain whether they'd been shamed, saved, or exorcised. Within moments, the motorcycles were rumbling away into the dark, and just like that, the night was quiet again. Keanu didn't say you're welcome. He never did. He just looked at Sandra. You okay? I will be, she said, brushing her hair out of her face. That was ... intense. Yeah, gas stations can be dramatic. She laughed an honest, unguarded laugh that seemed to surprise her. Do you do this often? She asked. Ride around stopping bad guys? No, most of the time I'm just chasing sunsets. You caught this one. He looked toward the horizon. The sun was long gone. Yeah, guess I did. They stood in silence, not awkward earned. A silence forged by heat, pressure, and timing. Inside the station, a girl watched. 16 years old. Name tag read Tina. Pink hair, chipped nails, earbuds in, but she had seen it all. She didn't film it, didn't tweet it, didn't interrupt. She just watched, and something inside her shifted. Later that night, she would open a blank notebook and write, Today I saw a real man stand up. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he just stood. And the world moved around him. She didn't know who he was. Not really, but she'd remember him for the rest of her life. Sandra leaned on her car. You know, she said, I've had bodyguards with more ego than you. I'm flattered, Keanu replied, deadpan. What are you really doing out here? He hesitated. Escaping, he said finally. Or maybe arriving. At what? Still figuring that out. They stood in silence again. Finally, Sandra offered a hand. Coffee sometime? Preferably one that doesn't taste like regret and old rubber? He shook it. If I'm in the area. She climbed into her SUV. The engine purred to life. She gave him a small salute through the window. He nodded. And then she drove off. Keanu stood alone again next to Pump 6. The air was still. The station lights buzzed overhead like tired angels. He climbed onto his bike. Didn't start it right. Away. He just sat. Listening. To the whisper. The sun had risen and fallen 3 times since the incident at the gas station. But for both Sandra and Keanu, it hadn't really set, not emotionally. Some moments are like ink and water. They spread slowly, sinking into everything else. The tension, the relief, the quiet power of a man standing still while the world threatened to tilt, all of it stuck with her. And him. They'd each return to their own kind of silence. But silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes, silence is where truth finally finds its voice. The tiny coffee shop in nowhere. Arizona, population, maybe 1,000, not counting rattlesnakes. It was called the Dusty Bean, because of course it was. A roadside shack turned cafe with furniture that looked like it had been stolen from a flea market run by drunk raccoons. But it had charm. and coffee that didn't taste like the sadness of gas station living. Keanu had found it by accident. Like most good things in his life, he sat outside under a rusting tin awning, legs stretched out, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug that read, "Don't talk to me until I've had my morning." Whiskey. He didn't mind being alone. Not really, but part of him, just a sliver, had hoped she might show up. And, of course, she did. Because some stories are written in more than ink. Sandra arrived just after 10 a.m. No makeup, jeans, a vintage hoodie that said, "Everything hurts, and I'm dying." She looked like someone who'd slept off an emotional hangover and wasn't entirely convinced the day was going to be kind to her. Keanu stood when he saw her. Old school courtesy. You'd think he was 90 years old if you didn't know he could probably still do a perfect somersault off a moving bus. Sandra gave him a look that was equal parts relief and exhaustion. "You still brood like a Renaissance painting," she said. "You still deflect with sarcasm." Touché. They sat. No hug. No awkward small talk. Just a nod and shared silence. Two public people. Off script. "I didn't sleep much after that night," she said. Keanu sipped his coffee. "Me neither." Sandra glanced around. "Did you grow up in places like this?" "Not really. But I've always been drawn to towns that feel like they're trying to disappear." "Because?" he considered. "They're honest. No one's pretending. You either survive or you don't." Sandra leaned back in her chair. "Yeah, Hollywood's like that too, except everyone's pretending and you still don't survive." They both laughed. A real one this time. That surprising, breathy kind that makes the coffee taste better. Keanu looked at her. Direct. No cameras. No handlers. "You seemed different that night." She didn't flinch. "You too. Something about being watched makes people fake. Something about being almost hurt makes them real." Sandra nodded slowly. "I'm tired, Keanu," she said. It wasn't dramatic. No violin cue, just ... honest. "Tired of smiling when I don't want to. Tired of being polite to people who treat me like a character they invented. Tired of being told to be inspirational when I don't even know who I am off camera anymore." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're still someone who stands your ground at a gas station." She smirked. "Only because you showed up." He shook his head. "You would have stood anyway. You just didn't know it yet." That hit her harder than she expected. She looked down at her mug. "I hate that I needed backup. I hate that you think it's weakness." There was a long pause. Then she said something strange. Something important. "My dad used to say, you don't find out who you are until something interrupts your plan." Keanu's eyes softened. "Smart man. Died before I made my first film. He'd be proud." "You don't even know him." "I know you." She blinked. Then, "Why are you really out here?" Keanu looked at the highway behind her, distant now. "Because I thought if I kept moving, the pain wouldn't catch up." "Did it?" "Every time I stop." Sandra reached across the table and tapped the side of his mug. "So why stop?" "Because maybe pain's the passenger, not the enemy." "Now that's a t-shirt waiting to happen," she said. They smiled again. And something invisible passed between them. Not romance. Not nostalgia. Just recognition, like two people realizing they're fluent in the same kind of quiet. A young couple entered the cafe. They were laughing, arguing about pumpkin spice verses. Hazelnut. Sandra watched them. "They're gonna remember this day forever," she said. "Because they're young and in love?" "No, because they don't realize it matters. Yet." Keanu followed her gaze. "You miss that?" "Sometimes. But I think I've fallen in love more with quiet than people." He nodded. "Quiet doesn't ghost you. Quiet doesn't ask you to retake the shot." He grinned. "Quiet doesn't post your worst moments online." Sandra raised her mug. "To quiet." Keanu clinked his with hers. And to not punching people unless absolutely necessary. Later, as they walked out toward their bikes and cars, Sandra turned to him. Do you ever think, maybe we're not here to be heroes, but just to notice when people need one? Keanu looked at her. That's what makes you a hero. She rolled her eyes. Stop it. I already cried once this week. He chuckled. You're allowed. I hate being allowed. I like fighting for it. And yet, here you are, taking up space like it's yours. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I'm glad I ran out of gas near that station. I'm glad I was early for once. They stood there for a second too long. Not awkward. Just complete. Two travelers. Two humans. No scripts. No fame. Just presence. Sandra got into her SUV, Keanu onto his bike. Hey, she said before shutting the door, if I ever open a foundation to help people like Tina, the girl at the station, I'm naming it after that pump. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Pump 6? Yeah, where everything changed. He nodded, solemn. I'll donate the first helmet. She grinned. Only if it's autographed. He revved the bike. Only if you promise not to sell it on eBay. And with that, they parted again, not with sadness, but with peace. In her journal that night, Sandra wrote, I talked to someone today who reminded me who I used to be. Not the actress. Not the advocate. Just the person. The girl who knew when something was wrong and said something. I want to be her again. Maybe I already am. Pump 6, that's where I met her again. They say the smallest stone makes the longest ripple. They rarely tell you what kind of stone it was, what pain it carried, what hands tossed it, whether it meant to make a wave or just hope not to sink. But this stone? It dropped at Pump 6 and echoed through lives like a quiet, unstoppable tide. Tina. The watcher with pink hair. Tina had never seen anyone like him. Not Keanu, although yes. Holy hell, that was definitely him. Not Sandra Bullock, either, though she'd held it together like a damn queen. It was how he stood. Just stood. Still, but charged. Like a lighthouse wearing a leather jacket. She'd seen plenty of confrontations in her short time behind the bulletproof glass of Leo's food and fuel. Met heads arguing over scratchers. Drunk cowboys threatening to ride their horses through the building. They were bluffing mostly. But this? This was different. Tina hadn't pulled out her phone. That wasn't instinct. For her, she wrote. Words were her currency. Not likes, not views. So after they left, she pulled out her journal, the cheap spiral kind you buy in bulk during school supply season, and wrote until the coffee went cold. She wrote about the way Keanu didn't flex his presence like a threat. About how Sandra stood her ground, but allowed someone to have her back without apologizing for it. She wrote about power without performance. Strength without spectacle. And she titled the entry, When Kindness Didn't Blink. The next day, she posted an anonymous blog entry from her tiny corner of the internet. She didn't name names, she just told the story. Within 2 days, it had been shared 30,000 times. By the end of the week, that number passed 100,000. People didn't care who they cared what. They cared that someone stood when they could have walked. That someone said no without shouting. That help didn't arrive on a white horse, but a scratched-up motorcycle, with a man who listened more than he spoke. Tina's blog became the new, random act of kindness bulletin board of the internet. She titled the site, The Pump 6 Project. And everything started from there. Dusty. The man who didn't get punched. Dusty sat in a garage in his hometown of Elsinore, staring at an engine he didn't plan to fix. The motor oil on his hands was older than most of his regrets, but that didn't mean it didn't stain all the same. Hadn't told anyone what happened at the gas station. Not his crew. Not his sister. Not the woman he sometimes called when he was lonely and buzzed and pretending to care about horoscopes. But he felt it. That guy, whoever the hell he was, didn't hit him. Didn't yell. Didn't puff up like a cop in a costume. He just stood. It made Dusty feel ... small. Worse than a punch. Worse than shame. It made him feel seen. In a way he didn't know he was desperate for . So he sat there, chain smoking beside a rusting toolbox, replaying it over and over, and then he opened an old notebook. One from his court-ordered anger management class. He hadn't touched it since. On the inside cover, he wrote, "I want to be the guy who doesn't need to be louder to be heard." He didn't post it online. Didn't tell anyone. But he started carrying it in his back pocket. And some days, that was enough. Marcus, the veteran with too many ghosts. Blog post found its way to a small VA hospital in Oregon. Marcus, 42, ex-Army, had been staring at the same ceiling tile for the better part of an hour when a nurse left a tablet on the table next to him. "Thought you'd like this," she said. He didn't look. Not at first. But eventually, curiosity won. And he read Tina's post. Then read it again. And again, something in it cracked open. The vault where he kept all the things he wasn't strong enough to name. Like how he hated that kindness made him cry now. Or that he sometimes felt like the real war started when the bullets stopped. He wasn't Sandra. He wasn't Keanu. But he was someone who needed saving once. And never figured out how to ask. So Marcus started a small group at the VA. Not about PTSD. Not about war. About moments. Each week, one veteran shared a story of a moment they saw something good happen. They called it the Quiet Watch. Because sometimes, you don't need to be the hero. You just need to know they still exist. Sandra. The flame rekindled back in LA. The noise returned fast. There were charity galas, talk show appearances, agents negotiating deals where the word authenticity was used the same way people use sugar-free on ice cream that still tastes like sadness. But Sandra? She'd changed. Not in the new skincare line kind of way. In the eyes softened, jaw unclenched kind of way. She didn't try to tell the gas station story to anyone, because it wasn't hers. Exactly. It belonged to the moment. But she did something bold. She took a year off. No movies. No press. Instead, she launched a small nonprofit, Pump 6 Foundation. Their mission: help people who feel unsafe in everyday spaces. They partnered with gas stations, bus stops, diners. Places that often went unnoticed until someone felt afraid in them. Their first outreach? Hiring trauma-informed staff for 24-hour roadside cafes across 5 states. Their first campaign slogan? Not all heroes need a cape. Sometimes they just need to stand. Keanu. The man still writing. He heard about the blog. Of course he did. Tina had named him. But someone pieced it together. Photos leaked. Names got attached. The usual. But Keanu didn't sue, didn't rage. He just sent a postcard. To the blog's P.O. box. On the back, it read, "You saw it. That's enough. Stay kind. Stay standing. Okay?" And then he kept writing. Through deserts, mountains, forests, everywhere. Nowhere. Sometimes he stopped at gas stations longer than necessary. Sometimes he didn't. But he carried a new patch on the inside of his jacket, Pump 6, and every time he zipped it up, it felt like armor. Ripples are funny things. They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for applause. They just move. Quietly, powerfully, like a whisper in water. And from one single act standing without fanfare, kindness without demand came thousands. Los Angeles. 2 months later, the Pump 6 Foundation was growing faster than anyone expected. Sandra Bullock sat in a warehouse-turned-headquarters surrounded by blueprints, coffee cups, and volunteers in flannel shirts and purpose. Work was messy, beautiful, Real. No one cared what movies she'd done. They cared that she asked how they were doing. And meant it. They cared that her foundation didn't just send checks. It showed up, like she had, at that gas station. Like he had, Pump 6 had become more than a logo. It had become a language. A way of saying, I see you, and I won't walk away. But Sandra. She was still catching up to herself. She found herself driving more, alone, not to escape, but to return. To that quiet. To that version of herself who didn't wear a dress on a red carpet, but denim at a gas station. The one who said no and meant it. The one who let someone have her back. She pulled over once outside of Flagstaff just to sit on the hood of her SUV and stare at the stars. Not because she was lost, but because it felt good to not be expected for a minute. Somewhere out there, she knew he was still riding, and somehow that made everything less lonely. Meanwhile, on a highway without a name, KeanuReeves didn't check the news anymore. Not that he didn't care, he just found more truth in engine noise, and the way wind cuts across your helmet at 65 miles per hour. He'd heard about the foundation. He'd read Tina's blog again. He even stopped by one of the new pump save zones discreetly, ordered a muffin, and left $100 bill under the napkin. He didn't want thanks. He wanted the work to matter. That day at the station had been a spark. But this? This was the fire. Keanu had changed too. Not in the dramatic way that screenwriters love. In the subtle ways you notice when your hands don't shake at night anymore. He slept better. He laughed more. He even started carrying a cheap Polaroid camera. Said it was for proof, though no one was ever quite sure of what. But the biggest change? He no longer felt like he had to keep moving to be free. Sometimes he stayed in one place for 2 whole days, which for him was basically putting down roots. Their paths almost crossed again in Santa Fe. Sandra had flown in to visit a new Pump 6 site inside an old diner. Keanu had ridden through the same town 12 hours earlier, stopping only long enough to replace a shredded tire and leave. A note at the counter. Leave 1 slice of pie for the next tired traveler. Trust me, it matters. She saw the note. Knew the handwriting. Smiled. They were missing each other like 2 stars orbiting the same gravity, but just off by a breath. And yet, it wasn't sad. It was timed. They weren't avoiding each other. They were becoming themselves. Tina, the girl with the blog, got an email. From Keanu. It simply said, *, you reminded me that kindness can echo. Thank you for listening when no one told you to. K*, she screenshot it, printed it, taped it inside her locker at school next to a sticker that read, Be the reason someone feels safe today. She got accepted to a journalism program a few weeks later. When asked in the application what inspired her, she just wrote, one still moment at a gas station. They didn't need the rest. Sandra found a letter in her mailbox without a stamp. Just 1 word on the front. S. Inside was a note written in smudged black ink. *, I found the mural. It's beautiful. K. *, she didn't need to ask which mural. The mural on the side of Leo's gas station. It had gone up slowly. First, just a small spray-painted image of a woman and a man standing in silence beside a pump, surrounded by light. Then more artists showed up. They painted the words, Stand Kindly, in 50 different languages. A local girl organized the whole thing. Her name? Tina. Every year, on the date of the incident, as the town fondly called it, they held a little block party. Music, lemonade, free gas. No speeches. Just presents. Just peace. Keanu returned to Leo's late one night. The mural shimmered under the streetlight like a memory someone carved into the world. He didn't stay long, just stood there, helmet in hand. 1 foot on the curb. He pulled out his camera, took 1 Polaroid. And on the back, he wrote. Proof that it mattered. Then tucked it inside his jacket and wrote on. Sandra gave a talk at a college months later. She was supposed to discuss her film career. Instead, she told a story about a quiet night, a rude man, and someone who stood still. She ended the talk with this: the world tells you that strength is loud. That being powerful means taking up space with your voice. But sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who doesn't let the room break someone else. Be that person. Be Pump 6. The audience didn't clap right away. They just stood. A standing ovation born not of fandom, but recognition. On the back roads of Oregon, Keanu stopped for gas. The kid working the counter looked at him and said, "Hey, are you the guy from?" Keanu raised a hand gently and smiled. "Just passing through." The kid nodded. "Cool. Have a good ride?" He paid for his gas, took a free sticker from the Pump 6 jar on the counter, slapped it on his gas tank, hand, disappeared into the trees. Some endings don't end, they keep returning. Like riders to roads. Like echoes to quiet. Like people who stood still once and never forgot why. The gas station was closed. At least technically. Leo had passed away the previous winter, and no one had stepped in to run the place full time. Now the pumps were silent. The food and fuel finally burned out, and tumbleweeds blew through like unpaid extras in a forgotten western. But the mural? The mural still stood, untouched, vandal-proof by sheer force of reverence, faded now in places, sun-blistered and wind-worn, but beautiful. Like an old scar that tells you where the pain once lived and how you healed. It had been 3 years since KeanuReeves last stood in front of that wall, and now he returned. Helmet under one arm, long black coat flapping gently in the wind like a whisper made visible. He didn't come for a press-up. No one knew he was there. Except one person. Sandra was already sitting on the curb. No SUV this time. Just her. A thermos. And a book of handwritten letters she kept in a recycled pasta sauce jar. She looked up when she heard the soft purr of the bike engine fade. And smiled. Not the red carpet smile. The real one. The one you only give people who've seen you when you weren't wearing your armor. "I figured you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure," Keanu replied. "That's the thing about instincts," she said. "They don't wait for certainty." He sat down beside her. Two ghosts returning to their haunting ground. Two people who had once been the story, now just part of the mural. They sat in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was earned. The kind of silence that grows when nothing needs to be proven anymore. The mural behind them. Sandra, Keanu, a gas pump bathed in surreal light, watched without judgment, like it was holding space for who they used to be. Keanu finally spoke. The world moved on. Sandra nodded. "Yeah, but not the way it used to." He looked over at her. Did it help? She didn't ask what it meant. She just knew. Foundation's still running. We've got shelters in 18 states. Tina's on the board now. Dusty the biker, he runs a trauma recovery center in Elsinore. Calls it Wick House for some reason. Keanu smirked. "You?" "I'm quieter," she said, "but louder where it counts." He looked down at his hands. That day. It still feels like yesterday. She turned her thermos toward him in a cheers motion. Because it mattered. She pulled out a letter from the jar. Handwritten, crumpled, smudged. She passed it to him. "Dear Pump 6, I was assaulted once at a Greyhound station. No one helped. I read about what happened with you too, and it made me believe someone would if it ever happened again. You changed that for me. Thank you. Love, a stranger." Keanu read it twice, folded it carefully, returned it without speaking. Some things are too sacred for commentary. A car honked in the distance. Then silence again. Keanu finally asked, "Do you ever wonder if we didn't do enough?" Sandra didn't answer right away. Then, I used to. She paused. Then I realized the moment wasn't about fixing the world. It was about not letting the world break someone else. He nodded. Sometimes standing is enough, he said. Sometimes sitting beside someone later is the real magic. They both looked up at the mural again. The woman in the painting, Sandra's likeness, was drawn with her jaw set, not smiling. The man beside her, Keanu's silhouette, wasn't heroic. He just was present, still, not flashy. Not fighting, there, and that was everything. She stood. He stood. Where are you off to next? She asked. Keanu looked at the road. Don't know. I stopped asking that question. She nodded. I stopped planning the answers. He took out his Polaroid camera, snapped one picture. This time, the mural had both of them in the frame. He wrote on the back, "Still standing." He handed it to her. She looked at it like someone who just got handed a piece of proof from the universe. Then she pulled out a Sharpie from her coat pocket. She always carried one, just in case someone wanted an autograph, even if she didn't like signing, and wrote on the back next to his words, "Still worthy." They stood in the golden light of late afternoon. Not a beginning, not an ending. Just here, together, again. Different, whole in places that had once been hollow. And when she turned to go, she didn't say goodbye. Just, "See you at the next quiet." He smiled and whispered back, "I'll bring the coffee." The camera stayed on the mural as the sun dipped. One single crack ran through the bottom left corner just beneath the painted motorcycle tires. It didn't ruin the image. It made it real. Because real strength, doesn't come from being unbroken. It comes from choosing to stand anyway, even when no one's watching, especially then. End of story.